Today we have the pleasure of meeting Pablo Cartaya, the new YA author of the graphic novel Curveball, which we have here. So, how have you been?
I've been good. I'm good. Yeah, this graphic novel is actually my debut graphic novel. I've been writing for a minute, but this has been a really incredible experience transitioning to the graphic novel format. And it's been exciting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I ask what inspired you to kind of come up with Curveball? Like what's the story behind it?
Well, did you play sports when you were young?
I did.
What did you play?
I played basketball and I played a little baseball.
Okay, so I played basketball, I played soccer, I played baseball. And I had my dad was my coach for a lot of the sports. And my dad in Cuba he's in the Cuban Baseball Hall of Fame. He got recruited by the Cleveland Indians. And my dad was my JV basketball coach. My dad played basketball for the Cuban national team. So he's like,
wow.
Yeah, he was like a real, it's weird too, because he's like 5'8". But he was but legit like an athlete, like a real athlete. And I was like, his starting point guard on my JV basketball team. And I always wanted to impress my dad. I don't know if your experiences with sports, like playing, you just want to especially if a parent is good, you want to impress them, you want to do well. And when your parent is your coach, I wanted to impress my dad. And we were in the middle of a season once, and we were here in New York, and it was a snowy day, and it was a weekend. I didn't have a game, so I went outside to go sledding with my little brother, and we went and took a hill, and I went down that hill, and that was back in the day when the trash cans had no lids, like the lids.
Oh,
you know, you would slide on the trash cans. And so I went down this hill, I hit this jump, I flew up in the air, and I cracked my collarbone. I broke it in half.
Oh.
And I came back to the apartment, and I was like, oh my God, I think I dislocated my shoulder, because whatever. And then my mom was in the kitchen with my dad, and my mom comes over to look, and she takes off my coat, and my bone is sticking out of my, oh my God, it was like, I'm thinking about it now, I'm like, bleh, right? And I was in so much pain, and my dad was in the kitchen, he goes, and he slams the counter. He's like, oh, there goes the season.
Oh.
And my mom, maybe I shouldn't say this in public, but my mom turns, she starts yelling at him in Spanish. She's like, ¿Cómo tú le vas a decir eso al niño pobrecito? And she starts like, Papa, how are you going to do this? And I'm watching this exchange, and my parents never fought, and now I see them fighting, and I'm crying because I disappointed my dad, and I'm like, oh my God,
You're not crying because of the
No, I'm not even crying. I'm crying because I think he was upset. I thought he was upset at me. But because I'm like, oh my God, my dad's upset, and my mom's hitting him because she's like, how dare you say that about him? He's hurt, whatever. So anyway, this whole thing is happening. I'm crying. Not because I'm in pain, but because I think I disappointed my dad. Anyway, they set the bone again. They set the bone, which is a horrible experience. When they just literally break the bone back into place, and then you have to wear this harness. And my dad, I had to sit on the bench, throughout whatever, and then the season is going on. We're losing games, and I was supposed to be in that harness for 8 weeks. And 4 weeks pass, we're the last game of the season. If we lose this game, we don't go to the playoffs.
Oh.
And I look at my dad's disappointed again. He's like, man, whatever. And then I turn to him, and I go to the locker, and I put on my uniform.
No.
And I played.
In pain?
I played, and we won. And when we won, we're celebrating. We're feeling good. My dad's like, that's right. It's my son. This is my son. It's a great, whatever. And in from the gym comes my mom storming in. Guillermo! And my dad's name is Guillermo. She's like, and she starts chasing after my dad. Goes, and he just starts running. And as he's running away, he goes, but we won. And so this whole experience, when I was thinking about the story, Curveball, the first part of that experience was this idea of what do we do to our kids when we put too much pressure on them to deliver in a sport, right? I love my dad. You know, my dad drove a competitive drive in me, right? But this idea that you're as a parent, you're trying to push your kid into something more than what, you know, at what point is it about them just loving to play, and at what point is it about you trying to like relive something that you're missing, right? And so the first part of this is very much tied to this kid named Elena, who's a very gifted athlete, baseball player, like her mom was.
I'm seeing the connection.
You see that, right? Yeah, okay, you got this, right? All right, so, and it's a girl because, to me, in my mind, when I was devising the story, she was always Elena. Like, it was, like, as a writer, the character, there's no real, like, oh, it has to be a boy, it has to be a girl, it has to be anything. It's just whatever I see the character as, and I always saw her as Elena. So I wrote it as Elena, and then I wrote it as his mom, and that connection, that link of, like, that pressure. So what happens when Elena, after she loses her Little League baseball game that would have brought her to the regionals, she loses and then goes home and bummed and then gets hurt, and then she has to spend the summer with her little brother Benji, who's a live action role player.
Yes, LARP.
He's a LARPer, right? And like I didn't LARP, or I didn't play Dungeons and Dragons when I was a kid, but I played. And I had a huge imagination. I was a kid that, like, whenever family would come over, my tios and my tias and my cousins would come over, like, I would grab all the little cousins and I'd put on shows. And sometimes it was like I would finish a practice and I would come home, and when my cousins were over, I'd be like, all right, let's go and put on a show, you know, and for all the adults, you know. And so, like, those two sides of me are what made themselves into this book. And it's like how this kid learns to love to play again. Right? Learns to take ownership of her love of playing, right? Not for her mom. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
That was. I'm like seeing the.
It's a lot, but it's, you know. But when we talk about writing stories, like, we have to create layers for these stories, right? That they exist not in singularities, but they exist in multitudes, right? And so there's like all these layers that are put into the story that I hope translates when someone picks it up and reads it.
Wow, that's a great, like, I actually read it, and I'm seeing, like, after you told your story, I'm seeing the connection between the two. I'm like, wow, okay, now I see, like, he kind of lived through Curveball is about his life a little bit. Yeah,
I mean, yeah, it's like, I mean, obviously it's set in Wisconsin, and it's, you know, and Elena is a female, and it's her mom, but the heart of it is very much tied to that. And that's what we do as writers. We kind of bring these emotional links that we have from the past that we try to embed into our stories.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so who is your favorite character within this book? Like, is it Elena? Is it Benji? I know, like, both of them kind of derive.
I mean, look, I'm always gonna say abuelo. Like, the abuelo or the abuela is always gonna be my favorite, because that was like, my abuela was like my person, you know. And my grandfather, I love my grandfather too, like, with all my heart. My grandfather, for his honeymoon with my grandma, like, went from Cuba, and this is like my poor grandmother, like, he went on their honeymoon, they left Cuba and they toured all the baseball stadiums in the United States as part of their honeymoon. So, like, it's not like they didn't go to Rome or Venice or whatever. No, my abuelo wanted to go, like, to all these little baseball stadiums. And he had these, like he played baseball, he had these old, like, I have this old 1930s baseball glove that he gave me. And so, like, the idea of, like, the love of my grandparents is always a major thread in all my books. And so if I was gonna pick one, which I don't like to pick one, but if I was going to, I mean, abuelo is, you know. And if you notice, I told you my dad's name was Guillermo.
Oh.
The abuelo is Guillermo in this one.
Yeah.
And also, a little Easter egg for my family, really, but nobody would know this other than somebody would know, is that Elena's number 8 was my dad's number in Cuba.
I'm seeing the connections.
So there's a baseball picture of my dad, in black and white picture, and he's like that, and he's playing, and he's wearing pinstripes like that, and he's wearing the number 8. Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
What has your, like, has any of your family members, like, read?
Yeah, my dad reads all my books. My mom, everybody, my mom, And
did he have anything to say about it? You know,
he's a quiet guy. You know, he just kind of looks. He's like, this book is good. He has a book club with his like older friends. Like his older friend, he's in an assisted facility, assisted living facility, and he goes over and he like talks with him, and they bring my books and discuss them, which I think is really cute. Like these like little old guys like talking about like children's books. I think it's so cool. And his old friend Manolo, who's actually just passed, he passed a couple months ago. His friend Manolo was like, he's like, Pablo writes like Garcia Marquez, and I'm like, whoa, this is like what? Yeah, I'm like, these are kids' books, but it's cool. It was a compliment. It's like a 85-year-old man, just like telling me I write like Garcia Marquez in a little book club in their assisted living facility. It's pretty cool.
So, is there any similarities between your previous work and with this newer one, with the graphic novel?
I mean, just the process about taking, like what it took to get it done. You know, it took a couple of iterations, and ultimately when the book was settled into a graphic novel format, and then having to draft it in the graphic novel format was a completely new experience for me. You know, writing a book that's in long prose, that you can take more time to get through scenes. With a graphic novel, as the writer, when you're not the illustrator, there's an intentionality that you have to have with every panel. So like when you're writing a page, so if you look at the like just this opening page, which I think is so great, like these are all panels, right? And those of you who know graphic novels, and like as the writer, every single panel needs a direction for the illustrator. So
Yes.
it's like
So it
Elena
flows.
Rueda up close, eyes fierce, you know. So you're giving the illustrator the direction. So it's like this page is a manuscript page as a writer. So it's like page 1, panel 1, and then I give a description. Page 1, panel 2, I give a description. Now zoom out, we see the third baseline, crowd in the audience, and so I'm basically giving directions for every single panel. And what I found really cool about that is that I was visualizing how the scene is developing, right? With every panel, thinking about what the illustrator, which in my mind, like if you're thinking about a movie, in my mind, it's like a writer-director of a movie and a cinematographer, right? So the cinematographer is the illustrator of a graphic novel, right? So they're going and they're drawing what the director is storyboarding, right? But a director's not going to go and say, okay, well the eyes have to be this exact way and this, and like going over into too many. At least I didn't want to give too many details, but I wanted to give enough so that the emotionality of the characters and the scenes that are happening are resonant. For the illustrator, when Miguel went and looked at my pages and my directions, he's like, okay, I know what I'm going to do here. And then he did an incredible job, and he used his own interpretation, which I think is a really beautiful form of collaboration, you know, where you can just create these sort of images. You can imagine these images in your head as the writer, and then the illustrator goes and gets it, and then creates their interpretation of what that direction is, which I think is a really cool. And then I think he did a really beautiful job.
Yeah, I saw it, and it's very good.
Yeah, it's good. The emotions, he's got like a lot of action in his scenes. There's a lot of emotionality with the characters' faces, which he got it. Like he did a really, really great job. And for me, I think, because I played so many team sports throughout my life, like I think that the idea of a team collaborating together is like a really cool thing. So.
Okay, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so what advice would you give people who want to make their own graphic novel, or just, you know, want to create their own book? Like, what was the process of you going and creating your own series, and like just...
I mean, I think like if you want to write your story, write your story. right? There's always two things that I say to an aspiring writer, whether you're going to be a graphic novel writer, you're going to be a long fiction, prose writer, whatever you're going to be. Number one is write, right? Find the story that you want to tell and tell it. The other thing is read. Read, read, read. Find the books that you love. Go to your bookstore, you know, right here. Like, go to your local bookstore, buy the books, read them, talk to the booksellers, talk to people, and just say, yo, I'm trying to think about this kind of story. What do you think? And they'll recommend you those stories, and buy them, and go and read them, study them. What makes them good? Why do you like them? What are things that you probably do differently, right? And then keep on that same path of writing your own story, right? And so at one point, those things merge, right? And then you have your own voice, telling the stories that you love. That make sense?
Yeah, it made complete sense.
All right. Good.
Hey, so if readers could take away one thing from your books, what would you want them to take away from it? Like, what is the message that you want to share?
I'm going to say, if readers could take away something from one of my books, I'm going to give you 3 things. I'm going to say, my books are all about family, community, culture, and abuelas. Or abuelos, you know, like there's always like those are really the core tenets of all my stories, you know. It's just kind of celebration of what family means to you, what community means to you, and what culture means to you, and then what your grandparents, you know.
Yes.
At least for me it does, because my grandparents, I was real tight with them, so.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay.
And fun. I mean, you gotta have fun, right? You know, you gotta like.
Yeah, you have to include some fun in there.
You gotta include some fun. I mean, but I think that again, like you have. My favorite kind of stories are the ones that make you laugh on one page, and you turn the page, and then all of a sudden you find yourself crying.
You're going through all the emotions.
I love those kind of stories where you're just like, because that's what the complexity of the human spirit is, right? Like it's like we live in so many layers, and I think that the crying and the laughter and the anger, like those are all emotions that are valid. You know, the grief. Like those are all valid emotions, you know, and then having those things kind of put together in a book, I think is like, those are my favorite kind of stories. So hopefully I put those in some of mine, you know.
Okay, so do you want him to read from his?
Do you have a section you can read from it, or?
This one, this is like the book. The Epic Fail of Arturo Zamora is a book that kind of really made me understand that I want to be doing. Like a big part of my creative life wants to be writing for young people, you know? And this book is a story, again, about a kid trying to save his abuela's restaurant from a greedy land developer, which, you know, we get a lot of that gentrification thing going on everywhere.
Yes.
And he's Cuban-American, and it's a fictional town in Miami. And there's Cuban food in it, and there's Spanish in it, and there's like all kinds of cultural stuff. And it was really the book that kind of made me celebrate who I am. And so this book is just very special to me because it helped me like define what kind of artist I wanted to be, right? And I got a shiny little sticker for it too, so that was kind of fun. So the beginning of this book is this kid. He's in a jail cell, and he's reflecting. And it begins called Note to Self. I'm officially resigning from love. Time in a cell would do that to a kid. For the record, I didn't do it. Well, I didn't mean for everything to blow up in my face. This was supposed to be the best night of my life. I was gonna save the town, get the girl, make abuela proud. Instead, I'm sitting on a cracked vinyl sofa while I await my sentence. And the only thing I learned these last crazy couple of weeks is that no matter how much we try to believe that David beat Goliath, the reality is the big guy always wins. Even if that big guy is actually a 5'2" land developer with stupendously gelled hair. My little slingshot didn't even bruise his forehead. The other thing I learned is that love is like a giant pretzel. It's twisty, and it's salty, and it leaves you dry and thirsty. So let me start the puro desastre, the like total epic meltdown from the beginning. 3 Sundays ago at my abuela's restaurant, La Cocina de la Isla. And that's the first little section of the Epic Fail of Arturo Zamora. And it really encompasses a lot of all the work, you know, family, community, culture, abuelas. and that sort of cultural element that I love to celebrate. Yeah. And yeah, I had it memorized.
Yeah, I was like, okay, you didn't even open the book to look.
I did. Well, I was like looking through. So.
Oh, I have one more question.
Yeah.
So, have you seen like because I know you were like talking to the lady who wanted her book signed for her daughter.
Yeah.
And have you had like a lot of kids come up to you and say, I've read your book or I've read your comic book and it inspired me to do this or to read more, or I want to be an author or illustrator or anything?
Yeah.
Like, has it like made them want to be more?
It's all over the country, and it's one of these things that like, you have you don't know the impact that you're having until you get reminded in a moment, right? And it's oftentimes when you're exhausted or you're tired or you're just like worried about something, and then you get like a reminder. One of those instances, I was doing the National Book Festival in DC, and that's a big book festival. It's the national, but it's brought on by the Library of Congress. Like it's a big festival, and I got invited to do a keynote. I was like, oh my God, this is like, and when I was big, right? And it's like, it's in the Library of Congress, like it's a huge thing. And I went, I like to go and scope out my stage before I do my thing. I've got to scope out the space, right? And when I went, I see the space, and I'm like, oh my God, this is like huge. It must have been 2,000 seats, right? It was empty because nobody was there yet. But I look, I'm like, oh, I'm never gonna be able to fill this. This is impossible. Like, and I start fretting over this. They had like these two big screens that like so that you can see the like like those
so you
big,
can see, yeah. Okay.
So there's like it's you on the stage, and then these two giant screens, and I'm like, there's no way that I'm gonna be able to fill this. Right? I had some friends over. I had like a cousin that was there, and like whatever. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm this is what I'm fretting about, right? Like, I'm not gonna fill these seats. It's probably gonna be like 10 people, right? And so when like 15 minutes before I'm supposed to go up, my handler's walking me to my like kind of like there's like a space, like here's the crowd, and then there's like a backstage, so you're kind of walking through, so you can see the crowd as you're walking towards backstage. So I'm like walking, and I'm like, oh man, this is full. This is so incredible. Oh my God, I'm thinking, I'm looking, and as I walk right and I see who's on the stage, I'm like, oh, it's LeVar Burton. So it's like, so that's why they were there. I'm like, oh, okay, so they're gonna just file out as soon as my turn, because I was coming up after Mr. Burton. So I was like, okay, there's no way that anybody's gonna, like, show up. They're all gonna file out. And so I'm like kind of like hanging back, I'm looking like this, I'm wondering like whatever. And then I see that people aren't leaving after Mr. Burton leaves, like he's done with this thing, and people keep filing in. And they keep filing in, and I'm like, oh my God. I'm like looking, and I'm still not backstage, and then like my handler's like, sir, we gotta go. And I was like, no man, I wanna see, like, oh my God. And then I get a tap on my shoulder. And I turn, and it's this woman, and she's there with her little daughter. And I see that her daughter's clutching this book, and she's like this, right? She's holding it like this. And she says, and the mom says, are you him? Are you Pablo? And she says it like that, Pablo, are you Pablo? And I was like, yeah. She goes, we drove 4 hours to see you.
Oh, wow.
And she looks down at her daughter, she goes, you're her favorite. And I look at that, I go, yeah? And she just, this kid just comes and hugs me. Like this, and she's like this, like hold, and I just instinctively like hug her. And I start bawling, I start crying. And I'm doing this right in the line sight of the entire audience. So like everybody's seeing me crying like this. And my cousin goes, stop crying. And I was like, oh my God. And I go like this, I go up to the front. Go up to the front, okay? And I asked them, I go, can you please give them some seats up in the front, whatever? And so I go, and I get on stage, and I walk on stage, and you see these big screens, and there's like all these people there. And all I'm doing is just staring at this kid. I'm just talking to her. And because at that moment I realized that it doesn't matter how many thousands of people are watching me. It just matters that one is. that one kid, that one person that has connected with your story, and it gave me such a perspective on the power of books.
Yeah.
Right? Because all you need to know is that one person, right, is so connected to your story that they convinced their mom to drive 4 hours to just see you for 20 minutes. You know? That to me was the real indication of like the power of what I do. So like I don't presume to be anything. I just write the stories that I write, and hopefully there are kids like that kid that connect with them.
Wow.
Yeah. I almost got emotional there for a minute.
Me too.
I was like, oh God, please, I'm on camera. Don't you start.
Your eyes were watering.
I know.
And then
I was like,
my
don't you
eyes
start.
started watering, and then
I was like,
oh
don't
my
you
gosh,
start.
why?
Don't you start. I'm like, you know.
It seemed like you were like going back.
I was going back. I
Like,
see her face. I see her. I'm thinking about like it's just that you know like when you get hugged, and there's just like a like they almost like melt into you, and then you like melt into them. You're just like hugging someone, and it's just like out of just love, you know. It's that feeling. And as I was telling the story, I was remembering that.
Yeah,
I was like, okay, I'm gonna lose it right now.
I was gonna say, oh, please don't cry.
No, I was like, I'm okay.
Oh my gosh.
My commercial.
Your new book.
Ladies and gentlemen, folks of all kinds, I want you to look at my newest graphic novel, Curveball. Have you played sports? Do you like live action role playing? Do your parents stress you out? If any of those things are true, this book is for you.
All right, now That was great.
Okay.
That was really great.
Thank you.
But go ahead. More.
Okay, so you ready? Start? Okay. So thanks for joining us, Pablo. It was a pleasure.
Yes, indeed.
Curveball, and your story was such a delight. Like, I don't know, your storytelling was just so great. I was like almost getting emotional hearing and learning, and it was just wonderful. Thank you again for coming to Kino.
I appreciate it, and thank you for having me. Thank you for your questions. Thank you to Kino for bringing it out, you know, and go visit your local bookstores, buy books from your local bookstores, you know, and support authors, and, you know, support stories.
Yes.